It's Bigfoot Collectors Club with Bryce and Michael. I know a ghost story or two. Let's do this.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
Bigfoot Collectors Club.
Welcome back.
The podcast where computers fuck.
Oh, wait, what?
That's what this is about, right?
Computer fucking podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Bigfoot Collectors Club. That's our first intro on our new platform, Campfire Media.
They're gonna love us.
Hopefully we got lots of new listeners, and you're already confused. This is the podcast where we talk to amazing guests about their personal paranormal history and share stories of high strangeness. I am your host, Michael McMillan. With me always is your other host,
Bryce Johnson,
and our super producer,
Riley Bray.
Yo, Riley Dog, you were
dog.
you were out in Las Vegas this weekend.
I sure was.
You were playing a rock and roll show.
I was
with your band,
Spindrift,
and Vegas. They're getting ready for a lot of people to show up near there in September. The Naruto raid on Area 51.
I think it will rival Vegas in size and spectacle.
Was there any buzz about it while you were there?
No.
No one's talking about it.
No.
Now
Just a lot of
known
metalheads,
as
heshing hard.
Alien stock.
We're going to talk about that in a few minutes.
wait.
But first, I would like to bring in this week's guest.
Bring him in.
Today's guest is a comedian, actor, writer, and cartoonist. He's appeared on Late Night with Conan O'Brien and was a writer on The Eric Andre Show. You can catch all of his hilarious comic strips at the Instagram handle at House of Relax. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Mr. Lucas Held.
Yay!
Yay! Lucas. Oh, whoa. Oh, no. He had sex with a tiny car and electrocuted it.
Ow.
Computers do know how to fuck.
Hell yeah.
We were just talking about how computers are always a nerdy thing, and we thought maybe they should be a cool thing from now on.
Totally.
A sexually aggressive thing.
Yeah, that's cool, right? It's one or the other. Toxic masculinities still lurking around. Lucas, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Thank you so much for having me.
You're good friends with our friend of the show,
Yes.
Ms. Marcy Jarro.
Marcy Jarro.
How do you know her?
I know her from New York. I think we met long time ago in a UCB class.
Yes.
In like early 2000s. And then we both did a bunch of stuff at Magnet Theater, and we were on house teams there together for years.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's pretty great.
Yeah.
And do you share her love for the paranormal?
Yes,
Oh,
I do.
boy, oh,
I'm
boy, oh, boy.
an enthusiast,
That-
for sure.
Oh, that's
You're
great.
going to be an ideal guest. It's great because whenever somebody comes on the show and says, I don't have a story or I'm not into it, I'm like, it's fine. You're going to be great. But then whenever we do have someone, I'm like, yes.
Yeah, no,
Perfect
totally.
guest.
Yeah. I'm into it, and I have stories, too.
Okay, great.
that's
All right.
great.
Well, we're going to get to that in just a moment. But first, up front, we have some BCC news. So, I don't know if anybody's heard this yet. This is pretty fascinating. This comes from Henrico County, Virginia.
Okay.
Man wearing TV on his head,
Oh,
caught
yeah.
on camera leaving old TVs on Virginia front porches.
It's Shia LaBeouf, dude.
This guy
I swear it's
is
Shia.
this guy's known as the TV man now. Residents living in a Virginia neighborhood woke up to find free televisions on their doorsteps. This is from ABC 6 News. It sounds like a great gift until you see the older box sets left at homes. He's committed to his trade, said homeowner Jim Brooksbank. No need to adjust that dial. These guys are good at writing copy. Doorbell surveillance cameras captured the man with the TV set over his head, laying an older set down on someone's front porch and just walking off.
Yep.
He wants to be known as the TV Santa Claus. I don't know, Brooksbank told WTVR-TV. The bizarre discovery happened Sunday morning in Henrico's Hampshire neighborhood. Outdated boxes were found at more than 50 homes.
Holy shit.
We got an old tube-style TV, 13-inch, said Brooksbank. I love that they're just talking to one guy. He said he thought his son brought it home, or another neighbor said he thought the son brought it home, and then he discovered that they were spread all over the neighborhood. Henrico police are tuned into the situation. These guys are loving their TV puns in this story.
Yep.
They have security camera video from multiple neighbors, but think it's only a prank targeting no one in particular. So this is pretty crazy. Part of it is just the video. The photos of this guy are a little spooky, and he kind of looks like a
awesome.
cryptid creeping around
TV man.
people's neighborhoods. Yeah, they still haven't caught the guy as of the latest story. As far as I know, the identity of TV Man has not been revealed, but I got to hand it to this guy for being creative and cool.
I like to imagine him in his underground lair, like getting his helmet ready, like, like fixing it up and like,
Every channel.
I'm going out again tonight.
On the wall.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Are they trying to catch him?
The police said that he's really only they were basically like, look, this isn't a crime.
Right.
The only thing he's doing
harmless.
wrong is he might be fined for illegal dumping. But the residents did say the police are doing a really good job of collecting all the old television sets.
Oh, that's good.
Where's this guy getting the TV sets? Because I figure like that's the first place to look.
Trace it to the source.
Like this is clearly
This is a case we could solve, probably.
yeah, this is an Edward Scissorhands situation where like his dad was like a TV repairman, and like he broke his head like falling off his bicycle, and his dad started replacing him with TV parts. That's, you know what I mean?
That's probably what's happening.
I think so. So guys, go to that.
Almost
hey,
definitely.
Everyone in Henrico, look up that hill. See that old abandoned TV factory? That's where you can find TV Man. He's
Start
right
looking there.
up there. So yes, let's move on to our next story. Alien stock.
Yeah.
Now this is our update on the Area 51 raid. Lucas, I'm sure you've been
Yeah, I've heard.
following this story. This is from AV Club. Area 51 raid, now a festival called Alien Stock that's bound to become this generation's Woodstock. If you thought the plan to storm Area 51 was a load of crap that stemmed from a shit-posting event on Facebook, you're sort of correct. There will be no storming, but there will be a festival in its stead. It's a sign of the times, really, that the 50th anniversary of the most iconic festival of all time couldn't get off the ground, but that an irony-fueled event that was memed into existence most certainly will. So you go to the Alien Stock Festival, and now it's saying... They have a website now. It says Alien Stock 920 to 922, where believers gather. Vendor applications now available.
Cool.
So
Guys, let's go.
when is the festival? September 20th. Where is it happening? The town of Rachel, Nevada. It lies 2 hours outside of Las Vegas. The population of Rachel is 50, so this event will cover almost half of the small town. This is the closest town towards Area 51, so it only feels natural to meet here and celebrate aliens and the unknown. What to expect? We're doing everything in our power to establish an amazing experience. That, read between the lines, everything in our power. That is a bit of a red flag because that's someone who doesn't have a lot of power saying, this really is becoming the alien world fire festival. I really think it is.
Honestly.
We're in touch with Domino's Pizza. We're trying to, we're trying to get some stuff happening.
We're in talk with Scott down at the Domino's.
Yeah.
How many pizzas can we get?
Scott's totally going to help us out.
They said the Little Alien is the only hotel and diner in the whole town. They're already preparing for this event, so we've decided to turn this into a festival and help them organize. The owner of the inn had already rallied several plots of property from landowners to host something of this caliber. They essentially secured the entire... I love that he's explaining this in such a defensive way. They essentially...
He's like, look, all right.
Essentially, they secured the entire front portion of Rachel, Nevada that sits on the extraterrestrial highway. It is a small town of 50 people. That's the second time they've stated this on this website. So this event will engulf about half of the small community. Half? There's only 50. Are they expecting 25 people or a million? I think it's going to engulf the entire town. There is nothing there. I've been to Rachel. Those involved have already given permission, but those outside the perimeter of the grounds may have different opinions. So we ask that attendees be respectful of residential properties. That means there will be guys in pickup trucks with shotguns.
Yeah. Awesome.
Also, what can you bring to the festival? Alcohol? ? Craft performing arts? ?
They put question
Yeah,
marks.
this is a lot of red flags.
Macaroni necklaces.
One thing they do say explicitly is no drones. Please don't fly drones during this event. This is common airspace for government operations. Yes, a reminder that probably doing this in the first place is a bad idea. So that's the latest on the Area 51 raid. It is now a very unorganized party.
The only question
Are they
is,
going to have
are we
stages or anything?
No
Bands?
mention of stages.
Didn't they secure a headliner or something?
I don't see anybody.
Blink 182, Tom DeLonge.
I don't see anything on the website.
Angels and Airwaves.
Suneaters.
Right?
Lucas, you going to go to this?
No.
Yeah.
No.
No. There's one way in and one way out, and there's nothing there.
It sounds like it's gonna be really hot. Like, isn't the desert's really hot in the fall?
It's like the hottest it ever is.
Yeah.
Oh boy, guys! I know you want us to go to this thing. I just don't think it's a good idea. I'd rather sit from the sidelines and watch it at home. Okay, so now we go from our BCC news segment to a new segment.
Ooh.
This one is called "Oh, ectoplasm on my face."
God.
We're canceled from Campfire.
It was a good run, guys.
This segment is about now when we find out that a theory that we had is completely wrong. And this weekend, I found out a story that I told last week where I thought there was maybe a neighbor of mine who was a ghost that dematerialized through a construction fence. Is actually just a regular neighbor who lives next door to
Not
the
a Men in Black?
lot. Not an MIB, just a regular old basic bitch.
So he just walked into his house.
He just walked up his driveway.
You can never trust your goosebumps again.
I can. And the sad thing is I just retold this story on Marcy and Betsy's podcast. So I got ectoplasm on my face. I'm sorry, everybody. You know what, though? I'm just going to say this means that I will never lie to our audience when I ever have a weird theory or a strange encounter that was weird. If I find out that it was not and I can debunk it, then I will debunk myself and I will be honest.
It's good science.
You know, right?
Yeah.
You got to be open and honest about it.
Yeah.
Anybody
I gotta say, I was never wholly convinced
Yeah, me either.
at the start anyway.
You sure he didn't just walk in something?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, if you saw it from the corner of my eye, it looked really weird. Sorry. Well, anyway, so I don't have a ghost living around the corner from me. I mean, I might, but it's not that guy. All right, we're going to take a very, very quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk to Mr. Lucas Held about his personal paranormal history.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
So, Lucas.
Yes.
What is your personal paranormal history?
Oh, wow. There's a lot, actually.
Oh,
Yeah?
good.
Yeah.
So let's talk about let's break it down this way.
Okay.
Where are you from? When did you get into this shit?
Okay.
And then what stories do you have?
I'm from Oyster Bay, New York, on Long Island, and I grew up in a house that was kind of near where a bunch of springs come up from the ground, and there's a huge, dark, ancient woods all behind my house.
Perfect.
And it was perfect. And so ever since I remember, I was seeing strange things. I remember being a little kid and hearing footsteps coming up the stairs. And my siblings remember this too. Footsteps coming up the stairs. Like, oh, my parents are coming upstairs. And then no one walks past our door. It's just done. It's over.
Yeah.
One time, my brother heard a spooky laugh in our kitchen. My dad searched the house. We thought someone was in the house. No one was there.
Your dad heard it too?
No, but he saw how scared my brother was when he ran upstairs. He jumped out of his skin. I was
Enough
standing
to
right next
search
to him.
the house.
Yeah,
Whoa.
and it scared the crap out of me too. Let's see. My sister said she saw a flash of light go across our yard.
Oh, wow.
Once, and that she told me this recently, and it blew my mind because one time I had a friend sleeping over who said he saw a flash of light go across our yard. And we ran into my mom's room to tell her, and she was like, "Stop lying, get out of here!" Like she was mad.
Get out of here!
Yeah. And so forever I thought, he was trying to get attention over at a sleepover. But now I'm like, no, he probably saw that.
Putting the pieces together.
Let's see, another. I'm just kind of running through them real
Yeah.
fast. I was staying over at my friend's house a couple towns over, and their house had a view over the harbor, and I saw a light moving all around the harbor, just like like a mouse moving across the screen. It was dipping down, going in between boats, coming up. This was back in the 80s, no drones.
Yeah.
Couldn't have been a helicopter. And that's right next to, I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but it sounds cool. It's right next to where the DNA lab is in Cold Spring Harbor. Where
Really?
Where they discovered basically how DNA works, and they're still doing tons of...
Guys, we did it first, still doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Don't
Really?
mind. No, that's what they're saying. That's their motto.
Oh, yeah.
Did it first, still doing
Still
it.
doing it.
They're like, we think we could come up with a better motto for this DNA lab, but they're like, no, we're number one.
We don't really need to advertise. We invented DNA, okay?
I mean, I feel like aliens might want to stop by the DNA bank and pick up some, hybrid materials.
Yeah, they're interested
Absolutely.
for sure.
It's like their grocery store. It's like they got to drop, or at least their 7-Eleven. Like stop by and get a 6-pack.
Of human.
Yeah.
They're definitely into DNA, if you believe all the stories of like just taking samples and stuff. Like, what's that about? They're doing something.
Well,
but I don't know. I'm not convinced of what it is. I have more questions than any kind of even opinions, let alone answers. Like, are they aliens? Like, it doesn't seem like it. It seems too weird almost.
It does.
It seems too weird. It seems to almost have more in common with like what they used to call fairies and what a lot of the religions, like Moses talking to a burning bush. Oh, there's like burning and lights and stuff and booming voices in the wilderness. It's very similar to a lot of this stuff.
It's all, I think, the same type of phenomena or the same source of the phenomena. It's just it changes and it varies itself through culture and time. Terrence McKenna, he also sounded this opinion that it was like a credulity test to think that these aliens in beryllium ships were traveling billions of light years to probe our anuses and hybridize with us. It just
The lengths they'll go.
it was ridiculous to think that. And he always
you're forgetting that humans have sweet buttholes.
It's worth the trip.
across the galaxy.
You know what? You're right. True. But it was crazy to think that, and so many people are under this assumption, especially, people who have experience in abductees and stuff like that. But you're right. There's more to the story than just, taking us for a hybridization program. I don't think it makes sense,
Yeah, but the old fairy stories are all about fairies taking babies.
Yeah, the changelings.
And wanting to bring the human babies over to their world.
Mm-hmm.
There's an idea that that we are beings of matter and that these entities are beings of spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're trying to do is compile the two and make a being that can exist in both the material world and the spiritual world simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then when we hear stories about some of the weird stuff with like Bigfoot, maybe that's what Bigfoot is, because he can live in the woods and shit in the woods and break down tree branches and leave footprints, but then he can disappear into portals, and old indigenous people stories of the Sasquatch were like, it's a spiritual creature.
It moves between
it
worlds.
moves between worlds.
Right,
so
right.
maybe that's what it is.
But so
Maybe that's us too. Some people say, "Oh, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience here." When a lot of people have psychedelic experiences, I'm so glad you brought up Terrence McKenna. I'm fascinated with him.
Me too.
A lot of people say the same thing, that they get this feeling, this unshakable feeling that, oh no, wait a second, this like meat suit I'm wearing is like, I signed up for this. This is like this is an experience.
We've
that
talked
I
about this
wanna
on the
do.
show a bunch.
Yeah. Oh,
That
okay.
this is basically an avatar that
Yeah.
our like fifth dimensional consciousness drops down into the third dimension
Yeah.
and experiences it the way that we would experience virtual reality
Right.
or a video game. And that the catch is, when you're in the third dimension, you can't remember.
You can't remember it because it would ruin the game.
It would ruin the game,
Right.
And you have to play by the third dimension rules,
Right.
which is, this place comes with a lot of, because it's a lower dimension, a lot of suffering.
Yes.
You know what I mean? A
Yes.
lot of suffering,
And
but
so-
also a lot of cool, beautiful and stuff and pleasure as well.
Right.
But when your avatar is killed, it's done.
Right.
Well, and not only that, but the rules can be broken. I mean, there's stories throughout history of people levitating, people moving physical objects, people actually breaking those rules of this physical dimension.
We saw The Matrix in 1999.
No, not the Matrix, but
But it is The Matrix.
Yeah,
same
But
thing.
they took their ideas from the
Yeah.
Matrix from, almost every religion and spirituality on Earth has these similarities. Hinduism, the mystical Judaism and Kabbalah, Gnosticism, which got crushed by the modern church. It's mystical Christianity, and it has all these things in it.
I got into Philip K. Dick last summer and his like Gnosticism stuff in his books, like
Yeah,
Valis
Valis was incredible.
It was
Okay.
insane.
I need to read that.
Oh, dude, you
you'd
would love it. Yeah, The Matrix also ripped off a lot of The Invisibles by Grant Morrison, but he's tried suing. I don't think he got very far, but it is very similar.
Yeah.
Have you ever read The Invisibles?
No.
Oh,
Me
it's
neither.
all about this stuff that we're talking about.
Really?
Yeah,
I feel
it's-
like I've heard him on a podcast talking
Oh.
about how the Matrix ripped him off.
Yeah, probably. There was a good 10-year period where he was complaining about it, and then I think once the third movie came out, he was like, "Well, whatever." Who cares?
This took care of
Yeah,
itself.
it's not. This is not going to be as big of a deal as I thought it was going to be. So when do you remember as a kid you were having some weird experiences like this? But do you remember being like, we were all boys, we're Bigfoot boys that grew up like in our discovering this stuff in like our elementary school libraries. You said the 80s. I think you're of at least our generation.
Yeah.
Riley's a little younger than us.
I'm just trying to look like I am.
But did you remember like being fascinated with this stuff as a kid?
Yes, definitely. I remember we had a book on ghosts in my library at school, and I would take it out all the time. They had a picture of like an apparition at the top of the stairs.
I think that's the brown lady.
That's exactly how it started for me too.
Yeah, it was probably the same book.
Yeah, could have been.
And I would just look through that and just be like fascinated and be like, I know that this is real. I know that this is real. And the whole like, for me, it wasn't aliens. It was more knowing that there was something unseen in the woods and that it was different. I go for walks in the woods as a little kid because we once went on a field trip, and part of the field trip was to go on a night walk, and all the kids gathered on one end of this short trail. It wasn't very long, and then the teachers were at the other, and one by one we were supposed to walk in the darkness with no flashlight along. It was a full moon, so we could see.
What cult school did you go to?
It was a regular school on Long Island, but there was a bit of a focus of
we all had to wear animal masks and robes,
it was
and then at the end of it, somebody was stuffed in a bear skin, and we set them on fire.
it was Wicker Man Montessori. Have you heard of it?
Oh yeah, okay.
Highly recommend.
Wickerman Montessori.
Yeah.
And I after facing that fear, I was terrified. We were all terrified, and I walked and I did it, and nothing bad happened. And I heard some owls, and I thought to myself, like, oh, this is like actually amazing. And it's not that scary. And so I would do that sometimes through the trails down by the house. And I would see things darting behind trees and stuff. And of course, it's like, oh, it's the shadow from your flashlight and this and that. But that's how, listen, if this reality is like made from our consciousness, if like quantum physics is kind of leaning this way, that our brains don't make consciousness makes our brains. And if that's the case, then being spooked in the woods and seeing shadows darting possibly is how these things come to be. Maybe the whole idea of tulpas and manifesting and stuff, and just how these weirdo things happen. And
it is
sort
like
of chicken and the egg kind of deal.
What's the phrase about, like, oh man, there's something about like dreaming, or are we who's
Lynch
dreaming
always
the dreamer, like that kind of thing.
Are we the dreamer or the dream? Right?
Yeah, that is very Lynchian, but it is that sort of thing where it's like, yeah, why couldn't we all honestly, why is it any weirder to suggest that the consciousness that exists collectively is creating our own reality everywhere? You know what I mean? And is that any different?
Is that weirder than the Big Bang? There was nothing before the Big Bang? How is nothing?
And is it any different, really, than saying that like a God created the universe? I grew up in the Presbyterian church, and they were like, God is in all of us. God is here. God is with you now. So if God is part of all of us and we're all part of God, then aren't we all collectively God, and aren't we all collectively creating this reality?
Yeah.
Yes.
How is that any weirder than what you learned in Sunday school?
It pretty much sounds like the same thing.
I think it's just like more abstract, and it takes the idea of like, let's get a dude who looks like Zeus, put him on a cloud, and say that he created all this stuff this way.
And you put it out of your mind.
That being said, that why we all are co-creators, I am firm in the belief that, and like John Keel and Jacques Vallée, that there is also another sentient entity that is perhaps more cognizant of the world and more of a creator than just we are. I was reading that book, John Keel, The Eighth Towers, recently, and it's an incredible book. And he kind of surmises that all this stuff is related, and yet there's this power that seems to sort of toy with us, like we're property, like almost in a trickster spirit. But there's a great book by famed Fortean, whose Fortean things were named after, Charles Fort.
The famous Fortean Charles Fort.
And I love this quote. I want to know what you guys think about
famed
this.
Lynchian David Lynch.
Charles Fort says, and I quote, "I think we are property. I should say we belong to something. That once upon a time, this earth was no man's land. That other worlds explored and colonized here and fought amongst themselves for possession. But that now it's owned by something. That something owns this earth, all others warned off." So, it's interesting to think that, like,
Goosebumps.
what if we're like, like pets, or like the property of this energy, this force, this creative entity? That's interesting to think, It's a little scary too.
It's a little scary, yeah.
John Keel, what I loved about him is like so much of this like UFO lore and UFO abduction stuff is like, oh, and then I just saw peace and I was with heaven and everything was great. John Keel is like, no, this stuff usually ends bad, and this stuff is more malevolent than it is.
He does tend to hint, John Keel would tend to hint that maybe some of the stories we haven't heard are because the people didn't survive their encounters.
Yeah, that's right. He latches on to a lot more people are harmed, practicing this type of stuff than not.
But I do find John Keel, even though, to be a little bit more like fun than some of the dark shit that like we talked about in last week's episode.
Absolutely. He would swing both ways.
I don't know if I believe in like the evil overlords, you know what I mean? I feel like if we have overlords, they're
people.
Yes, there's that. And then also if they might be above good and evil, they might be beyond good and evil.
I lean more towards the whole yin and yang thing. Like, maybe some of this is really dark, but if for there to be dark, there's got to be light too. Our history is full of tales
Force Awakens
of miracles.
people, Ray and Kylo, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
No, the polarity principle. I'm way behind that too. I think you and I vibe on a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
Seems like
but,
it, yeah.
but
I mean,
what I'm saying,
you are sitting in his lap. It's clear you guys are hitting it off.
But what I'm saying is that all all these experiencers, all these experiences lead to something greater than just us as a human consciousness creating them. There's something outside of our consciousness that is at play here, that is playing with us, and it's not just us, creating this world with our consciousness. There is something else above and beyond us, I believe.
Bugs Bunny drawing us on
Perhaps.
It's like that.
Why not? Yeah,
it's like that old Looney Tunes cartoon.
It's strange,
and just like Bugs Bunny, we can
about.
interact with the drawer.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's why you like Grant Morrison, because he's all about the way that you're thinking about consciousness dropping into the third dimension. Grant Morrison thinks about consciousness dropping into the second dimension, which is art, writing, comics in a very similar way. And he would write himself into his comic books.
Yeah.
And things that would happen to his character in The Invisibles, he was named King Mob, started happening to him in real life.
Oh, like the guy who wrote The Shadow. Have you heard about that?
No.
The Shadow, the character?
Yeah.
The guy?
Only
the
the
author,
Shadow knows.
Only the Shadow knows. The author claimed that the Shadow started showing up in his apartment and lurking around. And the guy who wrote Conan the Barbarian, same thing. He said Conan would stand over him with an axe.
Haggard.
Oh, man. He was from
S.
Texas.
Thompson?
No, shit.
Haggard,
I can't believe I...
Hagar the Horrible.
Yeah, Haggard. Dagwood. Let's go back.
But how strange is that, though? It's like, not only are we allowed to, create our own future per se, but we can also create these like evil spirit entities from nothing, and they take on a life of their own.
Yeah.
Grant Morrison talked about, so there's this like part of the book where his character King Mob is like attacked by these interdimensional like entities that are like very bug-like and evil, and he's imprisoned by them. And while he was writing that, he started getting this super rare bacterial infection that hospitalized him, and everything that the doctors were doing wasn't working. And at one point in his like fever madness, he was like, wait a minute, I'm in where King Mob is. I better write King Mob. I better write his escape now.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And as he started writing the character's escape, he kind of changed his storyline. He started getting better.
Oh, my God.
And then he was like, well, fuck, if this works, then I can start writing my life to be even better than it was. So he started writing all like really cool shit happening to King Mob.
Sweet makeout sex.
Yeah, and it started happening. And then he even started dressing more like King Mob in his daily life to kind of like channel it even more. It's really his stuff is he's a really Robert E. Howard, by the way, was the name of the Conan Barbarian creator. But it's anyway, you've got to get in the Invisibles. You'll dig that shit. What were you afraid of as a kid? You're walking around the woods. You're a much braver boy than I was, because I grew up next to the woods as well, and I was terrified to go out there at night.
I was actually I was scared about a lot of stuff. I was scared about ghosts. I was scared about the uncanny valley things. I didn't have a word for it till recently. I found out what uncanny valley is.
Yeah.
But the things that you see in your dreams, in your fever dreams, that hurt your DNA to look at.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. I would wake up from a fever dream and I wouldn't just let it go. I would be like, why did that feel like that?
Do you remember specifically one of these dreams that struck a chord with you as a kid?
I don't remember any like specific monsters or entities. I remember a vibe, being in a place, and the air itself, the electricity of the air was not of this place, and being in it felt like a fish being thrown onto a desert floor. Like not only like it was not my home, but it also was like wrong. It was just wrong for me to be there.
I love picturing you as like a 6-year-old boy at the breakfast table trying to describe to your family. It was like a fish being plucked from its elements and thrown into the desert, discarded into the desert, just like over your corn pops.
Enough, Lucas. Get ready for school.
Go to school.
Get out of here.
God, shut up with
The
it already.
bus is here. Come
Enough
on.
with the lights and the backyard. Enough with the fever dreams. You're fine.
Long Island paranoimies.
I used to have this thing that would happen to me as a kid when I'd be sleeping, and I would get this really weird tingling sensation on my arm.
Yeah, don't trust
and
that.
It felt like fingertips like touching my arm like that. And I always pictured there was like a little entity by my bed doing that. It was before I'd seen even before I'd seen ET or anything like that. I was just like, oh, that thing's happening again, where it's just like, like I'm sure it was just sleeping weird on my arm, but like I remember those sensations when you were sleeping as a boy was just terrifying. As a kid, I hated it. To
be honest, I was more afraid as a kid of people, of serial killers, of robbers.
Didn't even register them.
Yeah, it registered more with me that the spirit world, if it existed, was something that could scare me or maybe lead me in a bad way, but wouldn't like physically hurt me. That it was people who were touched in the wrong way by
that
something.
Person under possession that's listening to the demon's orders to come grab you.
I have a real. I know it's maybe you don't want me to launch into like stories now, but you just reminded me of something.
No, go for it. Story time.
So I was in kind of a bad place a few years ago. We had moved from a place that had a yard, and I love my outdoor space. I love this thing of grounding, walking on the ground with my bare feet. I really, really feel close to nature, and I really feel kind of sad and I get depressed if I'm away from it. And we moved into a little apartment because we had to very fast. And I had my dog in there, and
we is
me and my wife.
Okay,
and my daughter wasn't born yet, and I was just stressed out. And I remember I was also reading a lot about paranormal stuff at the time, going down rabbit holes. That was not stressful. That was fun, but hearing about these things like tulpas and stuff, and I started to like get really possessive about this tiny little postal stamp of land in front of our house that our dog would just go and lay in the sun in. And everybody's dog in the neighborhood would pee on it, even though I was like trying to grow vegetables there, which was insane. Why was I trying to grow vegetables?
I'm going to eat from there.
Yeah. And I kept running out of the house being like, hey, stop peeing on my vegetables. And they'd be like, why are you growing vegetables in this pea spot?
I once met a man from Columbia, Missouri who grew corn stalks in his little patch of grass out by his sidewalk. He full corn stalks.
Oh, you
just
can
right
grow
there in front
vegetables
of
anywhere. It doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying.
Right.
But so I was just going down this dumb rabbit hole of like just being real negative and started becoming misanthropic about, and it was not me, I'm not that person. And somebody, I don't know if I manifested this dude or if it was just a weird coincidence. Some guy dressed in all black started standing right in front of my apartment every day and ranting into his iPhone, vlogging. And for an hour he'd be talking, and I could never. Voice was always loud enough that I could hear, but never loud enough that I could tell exactly what he was saying.
Oh my God!
But I could always catch the gist that he was angry as hell, and paranoid, and just fucking negative as hell. And the dude fucking scared me. There was an energy about him that was just like, oh no, this guy is going down a bad road.
Was he right in front, like by that patch of grass?
Yeah, right there.
Could you see his face?
Yes. And other people saw him and heard him and also agreed how weird it was. So it wasn't like in my imagination or anything. And it just, once I started getting into a better place and started meditating more. I've been doing TM for a while, but I'd let it go for a little while, and I started doing it again.
You want to explain? I mean, we know, but for our listeners that may not know what TM is.
Transcendental meditation. Mm-hmm. And it's just a technique for meditating that's really simple, and it's really great. We were talking about David Lynch before. He's a huge proponent of it. It's been really good for me. I highly recommend it. And so I started doing it again. You have to actually do it for it to work. And when I started getting better, he stopped coming by. And all of a sudden, I stopped caring about people peeing. I stopped caring about dogs peeing on the thing, and they stopped peeing.
Right.
And it all just kind of started falling back into place once I changed my attitude.
Right. That's weird.
I mean, I think that's a really good example of when people talk about like the laws of attraction, or hermetic law of attraction, and like this, the secret, and like, or just magic, chaos magic. That is essentially like if you're focusing all that negative energy into that area, there might be a logical explanation of where this guy came from.
Sure.
It's not that he is an apparition or a tulpa,
No.
being that you manifested out of the unconscious, immateria. Yeah. But there is something where it does attract negative energy somehow. You know what I mean?
100%. There's this grid that we don't see that's
for
full
sure.
of the energy we put out. And it's, if you're putting that out,
I was
you
just
can get it.
thinking maybe he felt like that was like if he was seeing in this energetic spectrum, he's like, I feel safe right in this corner.
I can't fucking believe the world is going to do
That spot felt good to him to park it
Yes.
and rant and rave.
Yeah, exactly.
And it felt good because you'd focus so much on that spot of being a place of anger, paranoia, and then whatever was driving him away from him, or driving him, I'm sure it's like all part of this big interconnected weird grid or highway, whatever you want to talk about, mention it. But we've all had those like days where, thankfully I feel like they happen less and less for me, but there's like those periods where like you start your day and you're just like, I fucked, like I tripped, that thing fell, or I can't find my phone, and the rest of the day is just every single tiny thing goes wrong, technology's going wrong, whatever. And there always comes a point where I'm just like, all right, this is not my day, and I am in and my mindset is just attracting more and more. It's like I'm in this like echo chamber of disaster, and you really have to like stop, pull yourself out of it. I think that's like the very basic version of that is take a deep breath. You know what I mean?
On a big scale, that's happening in our country.
It is.
Now.
It absolutely is right now. 100% is, and we've manifested this guy who's now leading the country, who's on a giant megaphone, who's ranting and raving. And it's like we did elect a Twitter troll as president.
Yes.
I mean, we've summoned. I think more and more the internet is reflective pool of like our collective unconscious and a lot of where our negative energy goes. So much of it. And we have summoned this entity for better or for worse. There's no fucking it's no fucking coincidence.
Right.
And I'm scared because I think as long as we are locked in and plugged into and feeding into social media and all this negative shit, we're just going to have more and more leaders that are like this, that are going to reflect our own neuroses and anger and all this stuff, because like people who love him say, he says what I want to say, and it's all anger based. Yeah. It's all anger based
and fear based,
and absolutely fear based, and then it just feeds right back into it. Right. I can't remember what podcast I was listening to. This has been a year or so ago, but they talked about how, whatever your political standing is, like if you're angry at what's going on, especially right now, if you're not into the orange windbag, it's like you're doing the 1984 Orwellian minute of hate. I catch myself being like, oh, no, fuck that guy, fuck this. And it's like, whoa. I've become the thing that Orwell is like warning against.
Right.
It's like you're giving into that hate and negativity and you're ranting and raving about it. It's like you have to step out of that. It's so hard to do.
It's so hard to do
because you keep getting pulled back in.
And then you think about like, oh, well, what should the Germans have done when the Nazis were grabbing powers? They should have gone out and punched the brown shirts and been stood up for themselves and this and that. But it's like, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they should have like found a brown shirt in their circle and like listened to them and talked to them and hugged them and been like, I love you. I see that you're
suffering.
I see that you're suffering and you're going down this bad path, dude. Like, can we just talk? Maybe that would have worked on a big scale if everyone did it. I don't know.
No, but
it wouldn't have happened if everyone just hugged each other.
I say let's try everything. You know what I mean?
It's worth a shot, right?
I mean, Beto went to a gun show and was like, I want to hear your opinions.
Yeah.
I want to hear your opinions. Talk to me about why you want assault rifles. I think that's a good thing to do.
I know how I react if someone comes at me shouting and I dig my heels in. I'm not like, okay, let me listen.
Yeah. No,
everybody
I know.
hug
It's
each other.
tough.
Just everybody hug.
Yeah. And then
let's start there.
And then gaze into each other's eyes. And then once you feel that consent, you just get a kiss.
Just get a big old
Go for
makeout.
it.
Just an old-fashioned
Cross party lines makeout party.
What
That's what we need.
other weird encounters have you had? And
Okay. Well, I guess I'll just jump right to
please. We want all of this.
jump right to the juicy one.
Yeah,
I saw a UFO this past in 2018.
No
You
way.
did.
I saw it was an event. I actually saw 3 UFOs that I don't know. Maybe it was the same one but it was an entire. It lasted for over an hour.
Wow.
And
Are we
it's-
talking nuts and bolts here?
Not quite.
Okay.
It started with my wife was. It wasn't 2018. Maybe it was 2017. It was.
We're going to be real upset if it wasn't within a 2-year window.
So my wife was inside giving my 2-year-old a nap, and so I'm trying to remember when she was still napping in my wife's arms. But so she wasn't a 2-year-old at the time; she was younger. And so they're inside napping, trying to nap, and I'm sitting in our yard, and I'm sitting in the kind of shade, and I have a big view of the sky facing west southwest, heading, looking out toward the ocean. And we can't see the ocean where we are, but we're as the crow flies, about 1.5 miles. All of a sudden, I look up, my eyes just land on a light up in the sky, and this is daytime, and they just land on it, and it starts blinking, and I'm thinking to myself, whoa, that's weird. And it's like far, it's way out over the ocean. It's a little light, but it's blinking like bright, unmistakable, and it starts flashing different colors. And it's like a camera flash, but it's, again, this tiny dot way off in the sky. And then it starts moving. It starts drifting to the right, and then it zips over. And like I said before, with a like a mouse on a computer screen, it starts doing that just everywhere, all over the sky. And I think to myself, I do the classic. I rub my eyes. They went out, and there was an awooga sound.
So you were very sexually attracted to those UFOs.
Oh yes, I turned into a wolf. I should also mention this now. My phone's camera stopped working the night before.
Oh, weird.
What?
Stopped just out of nowhere. Just stopped. Wouldn't turn on.
Shut up.
It's true. And so I'm out there, and I think
There's that cosmic trickster.
I'm going to take a pic, and I think, no, it's not working. And I think I'm going to run inside and grab my camera, and I have a thought in my head. Now, there's going to be more of this in this story. I don't know if this was my thought or something else, but a thought that didn't feel like the natural thought I'd have in the moment was, no, don't run inside. You're going to miss this. It's going to be gone.
Totally.
This is for you to watch right now. You can watch it or not. Are you interested? I was fucking interested, so I sat and watched.
They were like, put down your iPhone and listen to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was like a crotchety, old person, and it's flashing gorgeous, multiple colors, moving across.
What colors did you see?
Red, purple, blue, green, like this full spectrum. White, going behind clouds and then getting brighter behind the cloud, as if to be like, can you still see me?
Whoa.
And then getting dimmer when it was not behind a cloud. And then I'm sitting there watching it, my jaw on the floor, basically, for I don't know how long. And I just started thinking to myself, I was listening to music on my iPhone.
Do you remember what you were listening to?
Yeah, I remember the exact song that was on when I first saw it. It was the song from Inside Llewyn Davis.
Oh,
And
sure.
it was, hang me, oh, hang me, I'll be dead and gone. You know that one?
Yeah.
And I was vibing with the song. I was really it was making me sad. And I was thinking, wow, that was a great movie. It was just so sad and beautiful. It was just such a beautiful human movie. And then I started seeing this. And I think maybe that might have been part of it. I think...
That's why I ask, because
I think that if you're going out there I want to catch these on tape, these fucking aliens, they're not I think they're sensitive as fuck, and they want to have a conversation with you, but they want you to be in the right place, I think.
Yeah.
And if you're open to it, and you're not all about I need evidence, I need to find out what this is. If you're more what's going on, I'm interested. And then you're more likely to see something, and that was where my mind was.
Totally.
So you're in that moment. You're
in
listening.
that moment, and it's just and more songs, and it's the Chemical Brothers, that really trippy. Let Forever Be, that one. That one came on too. I don't know the rest of the lyrics, but it's real. They were so perfect. It was like synchronicity. The soundtrack was one after the other of just songs that were
ultimate UFO playlist,
just framing us so perfectly. And then I started having these thoughts that had nothing to do with the UFO. Of comedy's important. laughing is really laughter is really actually one of the most important things right now with the state of the world. You're worried about the world. You have a new daughter. It's all kind of falling apart. Everyone's ripping each other's throats out and shooting into crowds, and there's religions are killing each other, and everyone seems to be like forming on two sides, and it's really scary. And like, oh, this is why people are able to laugh. We are able to take pain and hurt and suffering and transfer it into this thing that's joy. It's like a magic. It's a magic that we have, and that you do that. You're like, it was like you are. And I have to be honest. I've had some success in my career, but it's been hard. You know, I don't have to tell you guys. It's a slog. You have to love it.
Fuck yeah.
You go through dry spells, and you know, every now and then I'll have doubts. Like, oh man, did I mess up? I'm too far in this. What am I gonna do if like I can't support my family and get that money? And this was at a time when I was really having those thoughts, and I started having these thoughts of like, comedy's really important. Like, don't give up. Just along those lines. And then it occurred to me, why am I thinking about comedy and in my career? And I know it might sound cheesy to people, like, I'm like, actually, if you guys didn't know, I'm like divinely meant to be a comedian.
No. I don't think you sound that way at all.
I was thinking in my own mind how biblical in its own sense this sounds. Like when we read something about like that in the Bible, like, you know, some person sees a light in the sky and gets these messages about their life. What's so different about that?
It's you're just having a moment of purpose. That's
Absolutely.
all. I mean, you know what I mean, and not to even. That's a great thing.
And I think the Bible. I think you're right. And I think the Bible and the characters in the Bible we put up on this pedestal when really it's just folk tales about people. They're just tribal.
I mean, humble, Jesus was hanging out with the worst of society.
They're
that was
just
the whole
tribal,
point.
humble people.
The disciples
living in the
were
desert.
like castaways,
right?
Well,
and
more importantly, that miracles haven't stopped. They you know, people still see amazing things that can't be explained. Yeah. Amazing and incredible things still do happen today. They didn't just stop after the Bible was done being written. You know?
I agree. So then I texted. I was just like, I got to share this with somebody, and so I texted my wife. I could even find the text. It's not important, but what we said isn't important. But she was just like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "You come out. You got to see this." She came out kind of annoyed. The baby wasn't quite asleep, but so otherwise she would have been like, "No, I'm not coming out." But she came out. God is my witness. It stopped moving and stopped flashing when she came out. Mm-hmm. It stayed there. She saw it. I pointed, and she was like, "I see a dot. It's not doing it." And she was like, looked at me, like, "Are you okay?" And then I had this fear, like, "Oh God, if she doesn't believe me, I'm going to like lose my mind, and this is going to be really upsetting." Long story short, she believes me, and it's all cool. But it was a scary moment.
Sure.
Scary moment. But the gist I got was like, "Don't be rude, dude. Like, I'm talking to you now." And so she went back in, and it started again with the flashing. Big cloud came over, and I lost it. I'm staying outside, thinking, and I go on our hammock, and I'm just like, "Wow, that was incredible." Then there were three things. Then this next thing is going to sound, after the first thing, a little lackluster. It was kind of a vague 3 circles. I guess you'd call them orbs, but they were vague. They were almost see-through. Mm-hmm. Lower down, and they passed lazily over my yard, and they formed into a triangle, the 3 circles, and they moved off. And it was just like that.
Lackluster.
No, but after the light and, and
oh my God, Bryce is jizzing all over our couch.
Oh man, save your jizz because this last one.
Okay.
Hold it.
I can save it.
Then moments later, and this one is the one that like you're either going to jump on board, or you're going to be like, "This guy's a fucking liar. He's nuts." But I'm neither. What I can only describe as like, you ever see a snake swimming on the top of the water? How it slithers like that? Mm-hmm. Something like that, black, went over my yard, low over my yard, maybe 30, 50, 60 feet, the height that helicopters go. And I know this because it was followed by a helicopter. It looked like maybe a LAPD, like a white and black helicopter, followed this thing.
What?
Over my yard.
And it was a long black
snake-like shape.
Whoa.
That was just flew across the sky. And I was like, was that A kite? No, it was in front of the helicopter.
Wow.
Was that a drone? I've never ever seen. I would love to see a drone that looked like this. There were no rotors. It made no sound.
Did it look organic or did it look mechanical? Or
Knowing what I know, which is not a lot, I would say organic. When I say it was like a snake or a worm.
Wow.
But I don't fucking know. I mean, these things could be, if they're things, could be both. They could be neither.
Right.
How much of this do you think was, because I hear these experiences all the time, how much of this do you think was for you personally?
I think it was, I think we made eye contact and then it paid attention to me.
You were
I think it was
tapped in.
way out there. And I think that these things, I truly believe this. I think these things if they choose to communicate with us, they can do it through like telepathy.
Absolutely.
And I think that by looking at it and being interested in it and being in the headspace I was in,
you become engaged.
It became engaged because it went from miles away over the ocean to literally flying over my backyard.
Yeah.
So to me,
this is so common with so many UFO encounters.
And you hear
this feeling.
They get the idea that you're watching them, and then they like if you flash a light at them, they'll flash back.
Yep. I want to go back to the snake thing real quick, and I'm just interested.
Yeah.
If you could touch this thing, what do you feel like the texture of it would have been?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Was it shiny?
No.
No light was reflecting.
It wasn't shiny.
Was it a solid form? Like, was there light passing through it, or
there was no light? It was solid black.
Yeah.
Solid black.
Solid black. And then I immediately that night started Googling sky snake, sky serpent.
Yep.
And I didn't really get what I was looking for, but I got caduceus, the ancient symbol of
Hermes.
Hermes.
Yeah.
And that's very tied into a lot of these esoteric traditions.
Mm-hmm.
I got the tradition of the dragon. The Chinese dragon. It's when you look at it.
That's the DNA thing too. The two snakes intertwining over a pole. Yeah.
DNA. Back to DNA.
You see it on a lot of medical buildings. It's the actual symbol for medicine. You know?
Snake in the Bible.
Yeah.
The snake in the Bible. It gets misconstrued by Christianity. In the snake in the Jewish Old Testament, it's not the devil. It's something else. It's something that we don't have a word for in English.
Well, so there's another comic book, Promethea, which I've probably brought up by Alan Moore, another magician.
I love Alan Moore.
So he talks about in Promethea, this character wields the caduceus or caduceus or whatever it's called, and in the Kabbalah, which Promethea is really into. I know I'm jumping around here, but they talk about, they liken the snake is coming down from the tree of knowledge. The top of the tree is the Godhead, where God is. And the snake is the path that winds its way itself down through all the realms of consciousness, down here to earth, right? So when Adam or Eve is talking to the serpent, they're talking to the direct line through the direct line of communication. So that's to God.
So the
right?
snake is Prometheus.
It's basically it's
bringing us
the fire from the God. So it's essentially the avenue between us and the other. It's the messenger in a way, which is also fascinating because Hermes, of course, is the messenger of the gods as well. Yeah. And it's almost like Zeus's lightning bolt. It's the same thing. The lightning bolt, when people are struck by lightning, it's the zigzagging, slithering, trail of information between the Godhead and our veins and ourselves.
Our veins make that kind of pattern. The roots of a tree and the mycelium of mushrooms make that same pattern.
It's pretty interesting. But there are cases of, and you can look these up, of like medieval villages and even stuff closer to the turn of the century of people going out and watching these sky serpents fly through the sky for hours at a time.
Where can I find?
I'll help you Google them.
So you've heard of
I'll
sky
stand over your
serpents.
shoulder like we're practicing our golf swing, and I'll show you to Google. I'll point at the screen enthusiastically.
Right.
Yeah, but I think if you just Google like medieval sky serpent UFO stuff, it'll definitely pop up.
Wow.
Boy, oh boy.
Did this serpent have like a presence? Like was it benevolent, neither? Because it seemed like the light seemed like it was giving you this message.
I didn't have a
beautiful
malevolent.
Kind of thing.
No, there's
Not
no
at all.
feeling of malevolence.
I feel like those 3 translucent circles were the lights.
I think it was all the same thing, maybe.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they came down. Maybe they were heralding this weird snake thing.
Maybe.
But I don't know.
It makes more sense that the orbs were the light and maybe the snake was a different, but I don't know.
It's all
Dude, it was
part
in your
of
backyard.
the,
That's crazy.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. We have to move on.
Okay.
This is fascinating. I'm sure you have more stories, and we're going to have you back on the show.
Great.
But we have to play a game with you that we play with all of our guests. It's called Bullshit.
Or believe it.
All right, rapid fire. I'm going to go down a list.
Okay.
Bullshit if you don't believe it if you do. Got it?
Got it.
And if it's somewhere in between, you got to pick one.
Okay.
Got it?
Yes.
On your mark. Get set. Ghosts.
Believe it.
UFOs.
Believe it.
Bigfoot.
Believe it.
Angels.
Believe it.
Gnomes.
Believe it.
Unicorns.
Believe it.
Shadow people.
Believe it.
Loch Ness Monster.
Believe it.
Alien Greys.
Believe it.
Dogman.
But I don't know if they're aliens. But I
enough.
think people see
Fair
something
enough.
like
Greys.
Grays, yeah.
Dogman.
Believe it.
Parallel universes.
Definitely believe it.
The Loveland Frogman.
Don't really know about it.
He's a cryptid that people say looks like a frog.
I believe it because I don't want to insult anybody who actually saw it.
Mermaids.
Yeah, believe it.
Heaven.
Believe it.
Hell.
Bullshit.
Yeti.
Believe it.
Venusians, a.k.a. hot blondes from
Oh,
Venus.
believe it.
ESP. ESP.
ESP, believe it.
Chupacabra.
Believe it.
Demons.
Man, how can I believe in demons and not hell? But yeah, believe it.
Atlantis.
Believe it, but I don't know, shaky.
Bat Squatch.
Flying humanoids,
Yeah.
I believe, yeah.
Life on other planets.
Believe it.
World peace.
Believe it.
Peace in the multiverse.
Believe it.
Well done.
Lucas, you did
Yeah.
great. High five.
See? And
It's
I
a
don't get
perfect
yelled
score.
at by Bryce this
Did I
week.
tell you we vibed or what?
He was like,
Yeah,
you-
Bat Squatch is my new favorite. I'm on board.
You're into Bat Squatch.
now that I've gotten believe it's on those,
back on
you're
board.
happy. Yeah, the only thing. So, out of all of these, which is the one that you think you'd be most excited to see, make eye contact with?
I would be terrified, but Bat Squatch. But to me, it's not Bat Squatch. It's have you guys heard of the Chicago flying humanoid?
Yes,
lab?
the Chicago
Yeah,
Mothman.
Return
We
of the
talk about
Mothman.
we talk about it all the
Yeah.
time.
Oh my god, I got to listen to more of your show.
Yeah.
I think you're really gonna like it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, yeah, definitely. You guys are totally on the same wavelength with me. It's fucking fascinating and
Yeah.
it's terrifying,
Yeah.
and I believe it. One of the first reports was a cop.
Yeah.
Who's anonymous. He doesn't want his name out there, but people in the press are saying it's a real cop, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And this whole, we're talking about John Keel before. I believe that fucking story. There's no way these salt of the earth folks from West Virginia in the 60s were all making this shit up.
Yeah,
There's
that's right.
no way. There's no way.
No.
And people
So-
are seeing it in Chicago now, and that's fucking crazy.
That's what drives me crazy about skeptics in general is they're so quick to discount so much of people's eyewitness testimony, especially that from trained observers people in the military,
Yeah.
officers of the law, and just civilians in general, hoax, max hallucination, they're making it up.
Feels
they're lying.
arrogant, right?
It does
Yeah.
feel arrogant, absolutely. I don't like it.
No, me neither.
I don't like it. I love it. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's time for this week's story of high strangeness.
Cool. And if you like helicopters, you'll love this one.
It's A-Team. Or Airwolf. Airwolf. And we're back, and it's time for High Strangeness. This is the segment where we tell a story from strange history. This week, it is Bryce Johnson's turn. Bryce, what do you got for us?
So I got a case here. I've been meaning to cover for quite some time. I'm glad I tackled it for our first show with Campfire. So here we go. An extremely haunting and controversial UFO sighting which has well stood the test of time, was an event that took place in the piney woods of Texas near the town of Huffman, a case which would change the lives of the 3 witnesses forever, and not for the better. A case which would end in multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the United States government. It's a tale of high strangeness that I like to call the Cash-Landrum UFO Incident. I was thinking about naming it the Cash-Landrum UFO Cover-Up, but I'll go with Incident.
Okay.
And you'll see why. On the evening of December 29th, 1980, Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and Colby Landrum, Vicki's 7-year-old grandson, were driving home from Dayton, Texas, in Cash's Oldsmobile Cutlass after dining out. At about 9 p.m., while driving on an isolated 2-lane road in dense woods, the witnesses said they observed a light above some trees. Now, they initially thought it was an airplane approaching Houston Intercontinental Airport, which was about 35 miles away, and they gave it, little notice. But a few minutes later, on the winding roads, the witnesses saw what they believed to be the same light as before, but thought it was now much closer and much brighter. They said that the light came from a huge diamond-shaped object, which hovered at about treetop level, and that its base was expelling flame and emitting significant heat. Betty describes what happened next. We didn't know what it was, but we knew there was something that was lighting up the sky. We had begun to feel heat, and all of a sudden, Vicki screamed for me to stop. And when I stopped, she went forward, and her handprint was embedded into the dash of the car. And I thought, well, I've got to see what this is. So I got out, walked toward the front of the automobile, and I stood there looking up, trying to figure out what the object was. It was a diamond-shaped object. Then at the bottom, flames were shooting out. The heat was tremendous. It just felt like I was burning from the inside out. When I reached for the door handle was so hot, I couldn't even begin to hold on to it. I was more than scared. The only thing I was thinking was, are we going to get out of here alive? As a matter of fact, it was so bright and otherworldly that Vicki interpreted the object as a sign of the second coming of Jesus Christ, telling Colby, her grandson, that's Jesus. He will not hurt us.
Awesome. Turns out Jesus emits a lot of radioactivity.
Loud fire.
Yeah. Jesus or not, Colby was terrified. Cass said she was anxious.
Colby's like, I'm pretty sure that's not Jesus.
She considered turning the car around, but abandoned the idea because the road was too narrow, and she presumed the car would get stuck on the dirt shoulders, which were soft from the evening rains. Now, as Betty and Vicki got out of the car to examine the object, Colby was too terrified, and so Vicki, his grandma, quickly returned to the car to comfort him. Cash remained outside, mesmerized by this bizarre sight. The object was intensely bright, a dull metallic silver, and was shaped like a huge upright diamond with the ends cut off. About the size of the Dayton Water Tower, with its top and bottom cut off, and so they were flat rather than pointed. Small blue lights ringed the center, and periodically over the next few minutes, flames shot out of the bottom, flaring outward, creating the effect of a large cone. Every time the fire dissipated, the UFO floated a few feet downwards toward the road. But when the flames blasted out again, the object rose about the same distance.
It's like a hot air balloon.
That's right. It was only after that Betty got back into her car to drive off that they all heard the tremendous sounds of blades cutting through the night air and saw what looked like large, black, double-rotor helicopters tending to and following the large diamond-shaped craft. Vicki states, they were large helicopters that had the double rotaries on them. I counted 22, possibly 23. And these were the type of helicopters that you just don't normally see. I knew they had to belong to the Army. Scared and in shock, they all went home and tried to sleep. Back at Vicki's house, Vicki was awoken in the middle of the night by the sound of coughing and vomiting coming from Colby's room, who was suffering from high fever, nausea, and begging for water, and it looked as though he was severely sunburned. It was only then that Vicki realized she wasn't feeling all that well either. She decided to check on her friend Betty the next morning. When she arrived at Betty's house, she was startled to find Betty in even worse shape. Her temperature was dangerously high, and large red welts had appeared on her face and hands. Over the next 4 days, Betty's condition grew more serious. Vicki finally convinced her to see a doctor in Houston, who immediately admitted Betty to Parkway Hospital. 3 weeks later, She underwent treatment for acute radiation poisoning. Betty was in the hospital for a total of 6 weeks.
Jesus.
She lost more than 50% of her hair,
No.
and patches of skin on her face. She was treated by Dr. Brian McClellan, who was said, quoting, "There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that Betty was exposed to high doses of radiation. As to what the source was, I can't exactly say." Now, after her release, she continued to suffer side effects, extreme swelling of the face and arms, painful headaches that haunted her for the rest of her life, and loss of appetite. Vicky and Colby also suffered similar side effects. However, theirs were less severe than Betty's, perhaps because they remained in the car. That's when they decided to find out just what in the hell they had experienced and why this was happening to them. They started to make some calls. It wasn't until they finally called NASA that the girls were put in touch with a former project manager and aeronautics executive who had an interest in this stuff and was a deputy director of MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network. After hearing their stories and seeing for himself their injuries, John Schuessler officially came aboard to investigate the case. He started by going back to the scene of the crime, and yes, I do think a crime took place. More on that later. Where he discovered a large burn patch of asphalt right where the craft had been hovering. Strangely enough, they all went back a few weeks later, and the burnt portion of the road had been replaced with new asphalt, with witnesses reporting large unmarked trucks putting the burn debris on their flatbeds, covering it with a tarp, and hauling it away. Next, he interviewed anybody and everybody who lived within a 5-mile radius of the incident. And what did he find? At least 10 other people had seen the object, and 7 or 8 other people had seen the helicopters. And their descriptions were all very similar to what Betty and Vicky described. One eyewitness was a police officer, L.L. Walker, who was in the area on the night that Betty and Vicky encountered the object.
"My name is L.L. Walker.
He said,
I don't fuck with UFOs.
I don't fuck around. My wife Marie and I were returning from her mother and dad's. As we were coming out of some tree lines, I saw a helicopter. It was shining a spotlight on the ground. Then I heard the noise of other helicopters behind it, and I stopped the car because I didn't know what was going on. The helicopters were military, and they were all flying fairly low to the ground, and all of them had search beams on. I thought maybe there was an airplane down, but they didn't hesitate. They kept going in the same direction, which was probably intersect the area where Vicky said her encounter was." Convinced that the military was somehow involved, Betty and Vicky wrote to their Texas senators John Tower and Lloyd Benson. They replied back that Bergstrom Air Force Base had been notified and made well aware of what happened to them, and they would help out in any way possible. And if you believe that, I got some beach property in Nevada I'd love to take a look at. So on August 21st, they get down to Bergstrom Air Force Base, even bringing overnight bags, thinking they were going to receive some type of medical care. And when they arrived in the room, they saw a large map with a pin in it where the incident occurred. Betty and Vicky told the Air Force investigators exactly what had happened to them in December of last year and were questioned for over 2 hours and recorded by a military stenographer, which is available for anybody to read on MUFON's website. Betty recalls that even though it was 8 months later, they still had blisters on their bodies, and Betty was wearing a wig because her hair had fallen out, which they wanted her to take off so as they could see it.
I picture her doing that and everyone in the room going,
Now, the 2 military interviewers denied that any military or government operation had been conducted at that time and place, and that as far as they could see, the military nor the government was responsible for the claims that they had made. They were then told that they were entitled to file a claim and the Air Force would review the case. 4 weeks later, Betty and Vicky's claims for medical damages were denied, which in total for Betty was around $10,000, which was extremely a lot for
This
a
is
pet.
19...
This is 1980.
80?
And
yeah.
she was just a small business owner.
Yeah, that's at least 30, 40 grand.
And Vicky and
now.
Colby's in eye doctor's appointments ran about $1,000. Now, Betty later said in 1982, Betty and Vicky filed a lawsuit against the United States government. Now, the case was dismissed by a federal judge for lack of evidence. Betty said later, "I thought there was no justice left in the United States. And to think that we had a federal judge that wouldn't even give us the chance to speak or to be heard."
Ahead of her time.
So just what was it that Betty Cash and Vicky Landrum and her grandson Colby saw on that cold winter night back in December that had changed their lives forever? John Schuessler offers two explanations. One is that it was an experimental craft of some kind, probably from our government. The other, it was an unidentified flying object, possibly extraterrestrial. Vicki Landrum adds, I don't believe in little green men, and it had to be an object. It could have been a spacecraft that the government was carrying, but our government was carrying it. Betty, Vicki, and Colby continued to battle illnesses that doctors say could be the result of massive radiation exposure. Betty had been diagnosed with several types of cancer. She, Vicki, and Colby all have white blood cell counts that are far below normal. Their immune systems now have difficulty fighting off even minor infections. Brian McClellan, the family physician, said Vicki's having visual problems, and there are lots of suggestions that they may be related to radiation as well, but that depends on the kind of exposure, and someone needs to tell us what the exposure is so we can figure this out. Betty Cash said that all she wants is information that could help her medically. If it's a top secret object that's protecting the United States, then I could say I forgive them for that. But at least they owe us to tell us exactly why we were burned and what type of radiation we were exposed to and how much. After the UFO incident, Betty Cash was hospitalized for cancer treatments at least once every year. She died 18 years later at the age of 69. The Air Force declined to be interviewed for this story. Their official position is that no...
Did you try contacting the Air Force?
Contacting them.
I'm impressed.
Their official position is that no military or government operation occurred. Now, to add more intrigue to this already sort of horrifying story, is that in an explosive rare interview recently published between a special agent for counterintelligence for the Air Force of Special Investigations, Richard Doty, and leading UFO authority Dr. Stephen Greer, Doty comes clean and states emphatically that the event that took place on December 29th outside of Houston, involving the three innocent bystanders, Betty Cash, Vicki, and Colby Landrum, was the result of a captured alien vehicle that the military was flying, which was powered by a man-made nuclear power plant because they couldn't actually reverse the alien power source that worked. The craft had a leak or a core breach, which gave the victims radiation sickness. Skeptics like to point out to the fact that the few doctors' records point out that Betty's hair loss was probably caused by alopecia, an autoimmune disorder, and her various cancers, as well as Vicki and Colby's eye problems, were likely pre-existing conditions. Their burns were in all likelihood self-inflicted in order to gain money from their frivolous lawsuit, to which I say, yeah, fucking right. Oh, and that strange, bright as the sun diamond-shaped craft was probably just a weather balloon. And that's the story, you like that, of Betty Cash, Vicki, and Colby Landrum. Now, I actually have some audio here I'd like to play. This is Vicki Landrum reporting it to Newfork, which is the National UFO Reporting Center, in her own words.
Yes, sir. This is Vicki Landrum from Dayton, Texas.
Yes.
A deer come down and it was like fire was coming from it. Right ahead of us, and we had to stop. And we got out of the car, which I didn't stay out but just a minute because I had my little grandson, which I got custody of, and I got back in the car. There's nothing happened to me, but my eyes is burned. But the Betty Cash, it was with me that night, knots started coming, and she had a real terrible headache. And so she's been in Parkview Hospital over 2 weeks. I got out and she stayed 2 weeks, and I had to put her back. And all of her hair has come out. They can't find out exactly what's wrong with her. They keep saying it could be this. There's a possibility of that. But instead of her getting better, she gets worse. And could it have had anything to do with that thing that we stood and watched? Because we were close enough to it that we felt the fire from it.
How close do you feel you were to that?
I'd be safe to say it wasn't more than maybe a block and a half from it. Lit up the whole element. And I thought the world was coming to the end. I really did. I told my grandson not to be afraid, that if he saw something come out of it, that it would be Jesus. That's all that way I could explain to him to keep him from going into hysteria.
Was this a fairly large object?
Yes, sir.
Would it be larger than your car?
Yes, sir.
And did it land on the ground?
No, sir. It come down almost to the treetop, and then it went back up and went to the right of us. And we counted 23 helicopters. There might have been more come in on 1960 over here, we counted those helicopters up there, so there has to be somebody that knew about it. If it was caused from that, I don't want her to die. I want her to get better.
What roadway were you on at the time?
We was on the cutoff road, what they call the New Katy and Huffman Road. My name's Vicki Landrum, and her name is Betty Cash, and she's in Parkview Hospital. Now, one of the doctors believed that we might have got some radiation, but he is not positive. He taken her blood, and it didn't show up any in her blood. But in less than 2 weeks' time, she had lost all her hair, except right around the bottom. And she had hair that you wouldn't believe. And I mean, this is not a hoax. I'm not calling you for a hoax. Call the Parkview Hospital and verify what I'm telling you. I'm not putting you on. I wish somebody would go to the hospital and see that lady.
We're going to see if we can't get some help for you, and they'll call ahead of time and make an appointment.
I mean, I've been afraid to call, afraid that somebody would think I was, it's a hoax. But since I had to go back in the hospital for the same thing, and she's not getting any better, I have to have help from somewhere. Don't she's going to die.
Okay, we're going to do everything we can to help.
Okay, thank you a lot.
Thank you.
I mean, so obviously listening to that, you can just tell this girl is concerned for the safety and well-being of her good friend Betty, and her grandson, of course.
Yeah, that was insane. Like, she sounds completely reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Except for her belief in Jesus Christ. Just kidding. No, that's fascinating. Who was that call to?
That was to New Fork. That was her reporting it to, because they got the runaround from so many other places. She called the National Center for UFO Reporting.
Okay.
New Fork, yeah.
We'll put that link in our show notes because there's a video to go along with that, and the photos are of Betty's hair.
Yeah, when we were listening to that, it played
Horrifying.
a collage of photos, and you could see, I mean, just huge patches of her hair were gone, just missing,
Wow.
and the welts on their skin lasted most of their life, and they would blister. She said she would walk out into she would get these blisters, and when she'd walk out into the sun, it was a horrifying heat, and they would pop, and just like water would just seep out of them. Now they're both gone. Colby's still alive today, and I tried to find some. I know he's done 1 or 2 interviews. And I tried to find those. I wasn't able to, but I have a son, and I can only imagine like what that would be like. To these people obviously lived with these repercussions of this incident for the remainder of their lives. And they were just completely run around from the government. And here's the thing, right? If it was an extraterrestrial craft, how could so many of these helicopters get so close to it? It looked like Richard Doty explains it, and he goes on to say to Stephen Greer, there were 4 human pilots piloting this thing. They had trained for 9 months to figure out how to fly this thing. And it was flying great, flying perfect until they tried to slow it down, the craft. And that's when it started malfunctioning. And then, of course, they call in, who they could from Nellis Air Force. They launched this thing out of Nellis, Area 51, and that's where those copters
came all the way from Area. Okay,
that's right.
We got to ask our guest Lucas, what the hell was that? What do you think this is?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
that explanation of people, the government maybe using a captured craft and it malfunctioning seems to line up with the events of the story. Mm-hmm. The helicopters, it kind of sounds like it was malfunctioning. The way the radiation burns, you don't hear about that level of radiation sickness happening from other close encounters. Yeah. So it rings a little true.
I just have to say for the record, I don't. I'm almost as skeptical about UFO theorists like Richard Doty and certainly Stephen Greer as I am maybe the government in some of these stories. Yeah. But to me, the thing that strikes me is if it was a test craft, it seemed, whether it was a recovered UFO or maybe something that they were building from scratch, it seems highly irresponsible to fly it where they flew it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It also makes sense to me that it could be some sort of extraterrestrial or interdimensional craft that was crashing or malfunctioning in our reality. And those helicopters were just coming because they knew that thing was coming down, and they're denying it either way.
Yeah.
But
whatever it was, it definitely sounds like they experienced severe.
They experienced
radiation
it.
poisoning.
Yeah.
There's no question about that.
Yeah.
That they obviously, begot some serious illnesses just because of this incident. But yeah, it seems like, if this was a craft from another planet, that its propulsion system would be, not one of such a nuclear reactor,
Right.
And that's what Paul Benowitz, Richard Doty, I mentioned Paul Benowitz because we know that Richard Doty was a sort of notorious disinformation agent.
Yeah,
remember your
yeah,
Dulce
I know
base?
Paul Benowitz.
Yeah, it was
the
him,
guy.
It was him.
I
That
know.
was
That's
assigned
why
to the
I'm
case.
like, I don't take a lot of stock in anything.
How can we believe him?
Doty
We can't.
or
We
Greer
absolutely
say.
can't. But it's
Yeah.
like you said, Lucas. It sort of matches when you put the pieces together. It does sort of align with the story that's being told. That
Yeah, I don't trust those guys.
they couldn't figure out the alien propulsion system, so they put one of their own nuclear.
But I
reactors
can jump
in.
to that conclusion too with my imagination,
Right.
Right.
because I agree with Riley that it or Lucas, maybe you said it, that it lines up with the events of the story. If you're coming up with a narrative,
Yeah.
you use your imagination, that tracks. But we don't know.
But how quick is it for to go to the Air Force to look for some remunerations when they're like, oh well, we don't have any diamond shaped extraterrestrial craft, ma'am, and those certainly weren't R-23 black double helis.
But also, they might be talking to somebody in the Air Force who truly believes that and
Yeah.
doesn't know.
yeah, well, totally.
They may not be. You know what I mean?
They may not. Yeah, I totally agree with your point.
It's
They may
not like
they're not
everyone of the Air Force knows about this
And
shit.
yeah, they're not
It's
going to
gonna be
reveal
top
a black
secret.
a black
that was my
operation.
point. Right.
Yeah. If they
Welcome to the
did,
Air
they're not going to
Force,
reveal it. It's crazy. That's why I'm like, if it was theirs, boy, oh boy, was that so irresponsible to fly something that could injure in a civilian area that could injure people. That's why you do it out in the desert where no one's going to get hurt and no one can see it, which makes me wonder if it was something not of this world because it's showing up where it shouldn't.
I
or maybe it was a little boy escaping a compound with an alien.
That wasn't this. But the thing about like Richard Doty and Stephen Greer is like, I don't know what to think about those guys. I'm super skeptical of them too. But it's like sometimes disinformation artists, the best way they can do their job is to mix in bad
That's exactly
information
right.
with good
Yeah.
information. Sometimes be totally truthful and let that up your credibility. And then in other times when it's tactically good for you, lie.
That's
Right.
exactly right. That is the modus operandi
It's like
of
my
disinformation
ex-wife.
and misinformation. Is you mix an
Just
amalgamation.
kidding. I've never
of-
been married.
of
I just
truth.
wanted to make a misogynistic joke, I guess. Sorry.
Are you sure it wasn't my ex-wife in Texas?
Hey.
But listen, guys like Stephen Greer, I mean, as controversial as he is, he's been recently validated in some ways with that Wilson Eric Davis memo leak that some ufologists
No one knows
say,
what you're talking about, Bryce.
Well, they say that's one of the biggest leaks of the century, and it kind of backs up everything Stephen Greer said in a certain interviews. and
Stephen
stuff.
Greer loves Alex Jones.
Oh my God. Everything always back to you.
I'm just saying,
All right.
you gotta look at the
Jeez.
context of all this stuff.
But yeah,
Anyway.
with disinformation though, like you were saying, like the best way is to put in some real information because then it poisons it.
Well,
you know?
no, and then
It's like,
everybody-
you don't
well,
know
if it
what
came
they
from
believe.
him, then that can't be real because he said this other wrong thing. So
That's
That's
exactly.
right. And then other people will do the job for you.
Just
It
like
works
my
perfectly.
ex-wife's cooking, a little bit of sugar and a touch of poison.
Anyway,
That's attempted murder.
That's a great story. Very well told. Very well
Yeah, that was beautiful,
accompanied,
Riley. Oh, thank you.
Mr.
Thank you.
Super Producer Riley Bray. Lucas, thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people find you should you choose to be found?
People can find me on my Instagram, House of Relax, at House of Relax, all one word. And I do comics there, and they're so fun. And I do like little videos, and it's like I got a good thing going over there. See me on Instagram,
Great.
baby.
beautiful.
We'll tag you on
Beautiful.
everything.
Check it out.
Plugs for us. We've got coming up on September 7th at 4 p.m. in Salt Lake City. We are doing a live show with A Funny Feeling podcast hosted by Marcy Jarro, the previously aforementioned, I should say, and Betsy Sidaro will be at Fan X, the comic convention in Salt Lake City, Saturday, September 7th at 4 p.m. Come see us if you're coming to the show, and come to the show to come see us. I want to thank Campfire Media for hosting us on their network, taking a real chance and second guessing it now that they've heard this first episode. Just kidding. It was great. And then what other plugs? I feel like there's something else that I'm forgetting. We'll figure it out. I think that's it. The important thing is the live show.
Yeah.
Riley, any dates for
no, we're finishing up our record now, so but it's coming out in the fall on Alternative Tentacles.
Bryce, any clues to your top secret project?
Not yet. More to come.
All right, sounds good. All right, thanks everybody. I want to thank Lucas one more time. Lucas Held, go check out his cartoons; they're very funny. And thank Campfire Media, and of course, thank you, the listener. Until next week, I remain Michael McMillan for Bryce Johnson and Riley Bray. And until then, go get regressed. And good night.
Do it. Bigfoot Collectors Club is produced by Riley Bray. Our theme song is Come Alone by Suneaters, courtesy of Lotuspool Records. If you like the show, please rate and review us on iTunes. It really helps get the podcast to more listeners. To support the show, check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Bigfoot Collectors Club and unlock multiple reward episodes every month.
Campfire.